Bisaya, Dok, yung ano, yung
Nakamute si Doc Viral.
Hindi ba
Doc, nakamute ka. Mute. Doc, unmute po.
Nakamute
Mute,
pa, Doc.
mute po, mute.
No sound.
Pwede siguro yung host.
Parang hindi napakinggan ni Doc Perral.
Pwede ba si host maka-unmute?
I-unmute na lang po ng host. I-unmute na lang po si Doc Perral. May power po ang host na mag-unmute ng participants.
Hindi na ko siya makuhaan.
hindi marinig?
Okay na, Doc.
Yun na.
Okay na?
Opo.
Okay na.
Okay, magandang umaga sa lahat.
Morning.
Mayang buntag po, Doc.
Pasensya na kasi I was
Magandang
expecting
umaga, Doc.
that. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Pasensya na kasi I was expecting that the PowerPoint presentation that I have prepared, I have actually presented or conducted lectures on this topic. But out of 4 presentations that I have made, I found out that they were all made in Cebuan. So it would take time. I was thinking that I have an English presentation, but as I go over all of my presentations, I was disappointed because I did not see any English presentation, because most of my, all of my audience, when I presented this topic, were Bisaya. But anyway, if you see Bisaya I was trying to translate in English, but only few slides were done because of the time constraint. But anyway, if you see Bisayan statements on the screen, I will translate it in English, so those who cannot understand Bisayan or Bisaya can also understand. So in the title, you have there, it's in a question mark. Is the weekly Sabbath based on the new moon? I thought that this teaching is not attractive because of the difficulty in keeping it, because it falls on different days of the week. To those who are employed and your only your day off is weekend, you can hardly be an employee in any company or corporation, because these people who adopted this teaching would keep their Sabbath on different days depending on the month, because they base it on the new moon. So that's why I put it here in a question, in a form of a question. Is the weekly Sabbath based on the new moon? Because they believe, at first when I look at it in the internet, they really have strong argument. So in our presentation, we will first present why reckoning the weekly Sabbath based on the new moon is wrong and unbiblical. Then in the next presentation, we will try to refute their arguments, their biblical basis. Of course, they are not just presenting it without any biblical basis. They have biblical basis. They have texts as their basis to prove their argument. But we will only answer all of their presentations, all of their biblical basis later. Because at 12 o'clock, I have an appointment that I have made a commitment. I was thinking that my time is 11 to 12. That is why I made a commitment. In fact, I am quite, disturbed to think of my schedule tonight, because we have here our journey with God every evening, and in one venue, instead of, because our journey with God here is 36 days or 35 nights. 35 nights, to me, that is too long. I don't know if the attendees could sustain in that long period of succession every night. So what we did, so that we can go from one venue to another, we are making our own presentation instead of relying to the to the Facebook or to the Hope Radio. So we are having, that's why every night we are having our Bible studies. So tonight I will have again a Bible study. I don't know how we are going to rearrange the schedule, because my time, because I was the one who conducted the Bible study, but it was a little evangelistic presentation. So every night, so we have already done more than a week. I mean, 1 week last night, and we will expect to have a baptism this coming Sabbath. But in the regular program of the union, it has to be 35 nights. So we cannot go along with the 35 nights presentation, because I don't know, because that is too long. Before, when we conducted evangelistic crusade, the during the when I was still young, in the olden times, or not necessarily olden times, but in the early part of my childhood, it's always 27 nights, but this one is 35 nights. So around more than a month. But we will be presenting it every 2 weeks, so we can have 3 venues already. Our presentation is a sort of evangelistic presentation, not based on their presentation, because theirs is too long. Again, let us go back to the issue. So what is the issue?
Doc.
Hello.
Hello, Doc.
Oh,
Next Sunday, pwede namang next Sunday na lang, ano ang gagawin natin? Okay ka lang kung 7 o'clock?
kasi 7 o'clock in the morning or in the evening?
In the morning?
Pwede siguro 7 o'clock in the morning. Kasi in the evening, talagang walang tuloy-tuloy itong evangelism namin.
Okay, 7
mayroon
o'clock
kami in-expect na baptism ngayong Sabado.
Okay, 7 o'clock in the morning para sa mga graduating, sa mga nagmamasteral pala. At yung ano na lang, yung mag-a-adjust na lang kami ng time.
Okay.
Para sa regular.
Kasi dito, whole union yan. Buong Mindanao na talagang gabi-gabi mayroong tinatawag namin dyan dito, My Journey with God Season 3. So, lahat ng mga churches ay involved dito.
Season
Oo.
4.
Ah, 4 no? 4 na pala.
Opo, 4.
Ah, okay, season 4. So, yung mga taga Mindanao, alam nila yan lahat. So, yung mga taga Luzon, pasensya na dahil yun talaga ang programa ng union dahil kami ay kasali sa programa sa union. So, we have to go along with their expectation, and that is, of course, the ultimate purpose of that is souls to be brought into the kingdom. That is the ultimate objective. Now, let us go to our presentation. What is the issue? Now, these are their common issue. First is that we have to go back to the biblical calendar. They are saying that the SDA are following the pagan calendar. Of course, this pagan calendar is not God's calendar. What calendar are we using? Of course, all will agree that the calendar that we are using is the Gregorian calendar. And we all understand that the Gregorian calendar, as far as the weekly cycle is concerned, it is taken from the Julian calendar. So the only difference between Julian calendar and the Gregorian calendar is that there was there was a slight change on the date, but not the sequence of days. On the date, there was a direct jump of date because Julian calendar is already behind based on the number of days that is supposed to be in 1 year. In the Julian calendar, they thought that the solar year is 365 and 1/4 days. That is the solar year. But as the astronomers and other scientists have examined, it's not 365 and 1/4, meaning 365.25. It's not. But it is 365.2422, not 0.25. So there is a slight, There is a slight difference. Instead of 365 and 1/4, meaning 0.25, it is 365.2422. So because it is not exactly 0.25, 0.25 would have an excess. I mean, would get short of the cycle of the succession of days. And up to the time when it was discovered, there was already 10 days late of lapse of time. And so they have to catch up. That is why the date was jumped from pizza 4 direkta dayon siya. So that is the only difference between Julian calendar and the Gregorian calendar.
Doc, pakiulit yon, please.
Doc,
Again, you want me to repeat the point? So
Doc,
their
pwede-
argument, hello.
Doc, pwede ma-full screen imong PowerPoint? Please?
Full screen. Sige.
F5. Click F5
Ay,
sa
Doc,
imong keyboard.
Okay na ba?
Doc, i-edit lang siguro ko na. Katunda ko.
Okay na po, okay na po.
Okay na ba? Sige.
Thank you po.
So, their argument is that we are following the pagan calendar because Gregorian calendar is from Julian calendar. Of course, we don't have to trace anymore the way Julian calendar was made. Of course, it was Julian Emperor Julius Caesar was the one who initiated the calendar called Julian. But it was Pope Gregory VII who changed it, jumped from one date to the next date, from 4 directly, from Pizza 4, gipalukso og 10 days. Unsa nang gipalukso?
Skip.
Pinatalon, Doc. Pinatalon agad, Doc.
Siguro,
gipatalon.
Doc,
Pinatalon mo na.
siguro pwedeng sabihin na lang na nag-drop og 10 days.
Oo.
Nag-add og 10 days para mahimong 14 dayon.
So, Huwebes, pagka-Biyernes, diretso na lukso og 10 days. So, they said, what we are using is a pagan calendar. And they are asking us to go back to the biblical calendar. And to them, the biblical calendar is based on the new moon. That is why new moon plays a very, very important role in the Bible. Because all observance, all ceremonies, all feasts, all holidays are based on the new moon. And our weekly cycle is not based on the new moon. It is totally independent from new moon. So, they are accusing us of keeping the wrong Sabbath. The Sabbath that we keep is the 7th day of the pagan calendar, not the 7th day of the biblical calendar. I don't know if you have encountered that issue already, but if you happen to encounter, and if you are not fully aware,
Yes.
just like what happened in some other places, they thought that that issue is foolishness, but when they meet these people, they could hardly defend their position. What happened was that they were convinced, and that is why some of them left our church or leave our church and joined with them, because they said they discovered the true Sabbath according to the Bible, not the 7th day according to the pagan calendar. So they wanted us to go back to the calendar that God had established, and we have to keep the Sabbath based on the Bible, based on the biblical calendar, not the pagan calendar. And this is what they would tell us. Based on the lunar Sabbath, based on the new moon, every 8th, 15th, 22nd, and 29th day after the new moon is always the Sabbath day in the Bible. So halimbawa, new moon ngayon, Pizza 1 ngayon sa buwan, lunar month, hindi solar month. Itong sa atin, itong Gregorian calendar ay solar month, hindi lunar month. Ang lunar month ay from one new moon to the next new moon. Kung tingnan mo ang one new moon to the next new moon, nag-average lang siya ng 29.5. 30 days, minsan 29. Pero sa solar month, itong ginagamit sa Gregorian calendar, ay 30, 31, 30, 31, 31, 30, 31. Naka 30, 31 ang length, number of days in a month. Pero kung susundin ang lunar month, nakabase talaga sa buwan, buwan pa rin ba sa Tagalog? Yung month? Buwan ba? Buwan ba sa Tagalog yung
Opo,
month?
opo.
Tama, buwan, Doc. Tama.
Buwan. Pag bilangin mo from the new moon to the next new moon would only average 29 and sometimes 30 days. But in the solar month, which is the Gregorian and Julian calendar, mayroong 31 days in a month. Mayroong 30. Isa lang ang 29 at 28. Isa lang. Yun lang February. Pero karamihan, 30, 31. But in a lunar month, which is the Jewish month, which is the Jewish calendar, na talagang based on bulan o based on buwan, based on moon, yung buwan nila.
Tulayan o kuan rin. Ato ko ang pakitaan si Ma'am sa kuan. Pakitaan si Ma'am.
Hello. So, to them, the Saturday in our calendar is the pagan seventh day and not the biblical seventh day. That the calendar of God, to them and to their understanding, determines the weekly cycle, and that is based on the moon. Our calendar and the calendar that we are following is the Gregorian calendar, and the calendar that we are following is totally independent of the new moon. Hindi binabase yung first day of the week natin sa buwan, kundi patuloy lang siya nag-cycle regardless of the form of the moon. Pero sa kanila, yung full moon talaga ay nasa kalagitnaan ng buwan. Kalagitnaan ng buwan. So, yung Passover is the 14th day of Nisan or Abib. Yun yung buwan nila sa Biblia. Ito yung kalendar na gusto nilang sabihin. Ang Pizza Uno ay talagang yun ang New Moon's Day. So every New Moon's Day is Pizza Uno. Tama ba yung pagkasabi sa Tagalog? Pizza Uno? Sana naintindihan yung Pizza Uno ko. So, Pizza Uno is always the New Moon's Day. Tingnan nyo yung kalendar. Kung kayo ay nakaupo ngayon malapit sa kalendar nyo, sa August, yung Pizza Uno ay Martes. Pizza Uno ay Martes. Sa kanila, yung Pizza Uno ay palaging New Moon. Ang New Moon, kung tingnan nyo sa kalendaryo, iba ang pizza. Sa kanila, based on the moon. So, New Moon, Pizza Uno. Ang Pizza Dos ay yung first day of the week. So, yung New Moon Day, hindi yan counted sa 7-day cycle. Yan ay New Moon Day. Kaya nga, later on, tapos natin ma-establish, tingnan natin yung mga biblical basis nila. Kasi kung hindi natin ma-refute yung biblical basis nila, talagang mahirapan tayo. Kaya tingnan din natin yung mga biblical basis nila. So, ang Pizza 2, Pizza 3, ang Pizza 8 ay yung Sabbath. Tapos, yung Pizza 15 is the second Sabbath of the month. Tapos, yung Pizza 22 ay the third Sabbath of the month. And then, Pizza 29 ay yung fourth Sabbath of the month. So, iyan yung calendar nila na sinasabi nilang biblical calendar based on the moon. So, ano ang kanilang binabasihan? Una, yung mga what the Bible says. So, what the text or the text in the Bible are also the basis of their position. So, biblical text, which we will see in the course of our presentation. The second basis is the Universal Jewish Encyclopedia and the Jewish Encyclopedia. They will get their support from there. And we will try to see what the encyclopedia said, which is in support of their position. The third is that Nissan 14, their argument is that if you look at the encyclopedia, they said only the Seventh-day Adventists claim that Christ was crucified on the 31st or AD 31. If you go to the Encyclopedia Britannica, Encyclopedia Americana, they would put the year of Christ's death or crucifixion on 33 AD. That's why if you look into some of the Catholic books, they would put the date of Christ's death on 33 AD. But in the SDA diagram, in all of the SDA diagram, we put the baptism of Jesus on the 27 AD, 31 AD as the crucifixion of Christ. But in many encyclopedia, you will not find 31 AD, but 33 AD. So going backward, because new moon days could be calculated. In fact, in advance, new moon days can be calculated. Even if you will make a calendar of 2024, 2025, new moon days could already be calculated. You can already put the exact date of the new moon. You can already put the exact date of the full moon, the first quarter and the third quarter. All of that can be put in advance because it can be calculated. Not only be calculated forward, but it can also be calculated backward. And so in calculating back to 31 AD, they said Nisan 14, because which Nisan 14 is the Passover, and Christ was crucified on the Passover. If you go back to 31 AD, Nisan 14 would fall not on a Friday, but Nisan 14 would fall on a Friday, not in 31 AD, but in 33 AD. And by looking into the lunar, what is this? Lunar reckoning, new moon, they said it cannot fit 31 AD to fall on a Friday basing Gregorian calendar. But by basing it to a Jewish calendar, which they say is the biblical calendar, 31 AD is okay. But Gregorian calendar cannot be. That is why they said Gregorian calendar is a wrong calendar, does not coincide with the biblical calendar. Let us go back to the biblical calendar. So that is their argument. Now, if you have no enough background about calendrical studies, you will be in trouble. So, what are some of the texts that they use to support their argument? One of that is Genesis 1:14. In Genesis 1:14, it says, and God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs, for seasons, and for days and years. Now, they would underscore that term seasons. And they said the word season in Hebrew is muedem. So what does that mean? What would determine muedem? They said muedem could be determined by the moon. So if moon could be one of the determinants of season, and our weekly cycle is not based on the moon, then it does not agree with what the text has said in the Bible. Another, they said, Psalms 104:19, he appointed the moon for seasons, which is muedem. The sun knows it is going down. So, the moon is appointed for seasons. moedem. If the moon is appointed for seasons, which is moedem, is the Sabbath moedem or part of moedem? Let us go to Leviticus 23, 2 and 3. This is their argument again. It says, speak to the sons of Israel and say to them, the feasts of Jehovah, which you shall proclaim, holy convocations, even these are my appointed feasts. What is this feast here? In Hebrew, this is moedem. In Psalm 104 verse 19, moon is appointed for moedem. And the feast that is mentioned here in Leviticus 23, 2 and 3 is moedem. You shall have holy convocations. So you shall work be done. But the seventh day is a day is Sabbath of rest, a holy convocation. You shall not do any work. It is a Sabbath to Jehovah in all your dwellings. So the Sabbath is being pointed out in this text as my appointed feasts. And the feast here is moedem. And because moon is appointed for seasons or appointed for moedem, therefore, Sabbath should be based on the moon. Because it is called my appointed feasts. So their logic runs like this. If moons are for moedem, Genesis 100, Psalm 104:19 and Genesis 1:14, if moon is for moedem, therefore the Sabbath, because the Sabbath is also one of the moedem, according to Leviticus 23, 2 and 3, therefore Sabbath reckoning must also be based on the moon. So this is the simple argument that they would present. Moon is appointed for moedem, and since Sabbath is one of the moedem, therefore Sabbath should be based on the moon. Our Sabbath is not based on the moon. So, by looking at their calendar based on the moon, you have there the first day, the new moon's day. Then you have 8th as the 7th day, 15th as the 7th day, 22 as the 7th day, 29th as the 7th day. That is why these are the Sabbaths according to the new moon. What does it say again? What does the Universal Jewish Encyclopedia has to say about this? In the article Holidays, page 410, what does it say? Universal Jewish Encyclopedia. It says there, the new moon is still, and the Sabbath originally was dependent upon the lunar cycle. So very clear. They said, in this encyclopedia written by the Jews who are following the Jewish calendar, which is the true biblical calendar, they said, new moon, according to this encyclopedia, the new moon is still, and the Sabbath originally was dependent upon the lunar cycle. Originally, the new moon was celebrated in the same way as the Sabbath. Gradually, it became less important while the Sabbath became more and more a day of religion and humanity, of religious meditation and instruction, of peace and delight of the soul. The point in this statement from the Universal Jewish Encyclopedia is that the new moon is dependent upon the lunar cycle, which is also the Sabbath. The Sabbath originally was dependent upon the lunar cycle. So the Sabbath should be reckoned based on the new moon. Again, further in volume 10, in the article week, page 482 of the Universal Jewish Encyclopedia, it says, with the development of the importance of the Sabbath as a day of consecration and the emphasis laid upon the significant number 7, the week became more and more divorced from its lunar connection. So originally, it is connected with the moon, but later on, it was divorced. It was separated from its lunar connection. So you see, here is the argument that they are establishing. Based on the Universal Jewish Encyclopedia, originally, Sabbath was tied to the moon. Sabbath was connected to the moon. Sabbath should always be based on the moon. We Seventh-day Adventists are following the pagan calendar, not the biblical calendar, which is the Jewish calendar. Jewish calendar is lunar month. The Gregorian calendar, which is pagan calendar, is solar month. We are following a solar year, but the Jewish calendar is lunisolar year. Lunar and solar year. I will explain later what is the difference between solar year and lunar year. According further, the week of 7 days was connected with the lunar month, of which it is approximately a fourth. The quadripartite division of the month was evidently in use among the Hebrews and other ancient peoples. Where's that? Again, in the Jewish Encyclopedia.com article week. So they have a strong basis and strong argument to establish on their doctrine. And of course, because they base it on the Universal Jewish Calendar and Jewish Encyclopedia, they appear to be very, very reliable and authoritative. What did Ellen White say? So here is now the principle that we should look into in interpreting the Bible. First, we have to remember that although they still believe in Ellen White, they would even get some support from Ellen White, but their presentation is not in harmony totally with Ellen White's. In fact, Ellen White did not introduce lunar Sabbath. The Sabbath that we are keeping today is the same Sabbath that Ellen White had been keeping in her time. Ellen White said, "There are 1,000 temptations in disguise prepared for those who have the light of truth, and the only safety for any of us is in receiving no new doctrine, no new interpretation of the scriptures." Because these lunar Sabbatarian are actually Seventh-day Adventists. Before they get out from the Seventh-day Adventists, they were devoted Seventh-day Adventists. And they said that they received this light. Upon examining the scriptures, they discovered that the Sabbath that we keep is not in accordance with the biblical Sabbath. We think that the seventh day that we are keeping today is the seventh day of the Bible. But they discovered that the seventh day that we are keeping today is not the seventh day of the Bible, but this is the seventh day of the pagan calendar, not the seventh day of the biblical calendar. Ellen White said that we need not receive no new doctrine, no new interpretation of the scriptures, because there is a new interpretation of the scripture, without first submitting to the brethren of experience. Lay it before them in a humble, teachable spirit, with earnest prayer, and if they see no light in it, yield to their judgment, for in the multitude of counselors there is safety. I have met their founder here in the Philippines thrice. I have met him first personally when we had a debate in Bukidnon because the president of their federation and association and the head elder of their big church, it was a big church, was converted and in fact was baptized to their church. Their founder is a devoted Seventh-day Adventist. But when he discovered this, of course, he received this from outside and he established his group here. And so we had a debate because when I conversed with the converted one, he's actually, ang kanyang manugang ay pastor ng SDA. Binisitahan siya ng district pastor, binisitahan din siya ng kanyang father-in-law at talagang nahirapan sila kasi sunod-sunod yung mga teksto niya at sinusunod yung mga referensya niya. So nahirapan, kaya hinihingi nilang makapunta ako. Kaya pumunta ako, I went there, and I meet the man after the worship in the Friday evening. After our worship, we did not anymore go to the church. We discussed immediately after the worship. We discussed immediately his argument. And so he presented to me, and after his presentation, when I made counter argument of his presentation, he said, I could not outsmart you because you are a professor of theology. I want you to meet our founder here, our lecturer founder here in Mindanao. And so I said, that is my pleasure. So you call him and invite him so we could meet. And so immediately he called, and their founder, their lecturer responded immediately. And so they traveled far place, and then in the afternoon, we had our encounter. So it was a big area using PowerPoint projector. After the what is this debate, but it was a healthy debate. After the debate, the one that was converted by them was rebaptized. And so the whole family was happy because this man wanted to separate with his wife if his wife does not go with him. If his wife would keep on insisting on the calendar that we are using. He said, you must now use the biblical calendar. But after our debate, he was convinced and he was rebaptized. He was reclaimed to our church. I was asking him, did they follow the statement from Ellen White that if you found anything new, you don't have to receive it immediately without first submitting to the brethren of experience. He said, Ellen White said, lay it before them in a humble, teachable spirit, with earnest prayer, and if they see no light in it, yield to their judgment, for in the multitude of counselors, there is safety. So, the question is, ang bawat ika-8, ika-15, ika-22, at ika-29 day after the new moon is really the Sabbath in the Bible? 8, 15, 22, and 29? These are the things that we need to look into. And this is what we will establish. How do we treat this so-called new light? Second, we will establish based on the Bible that the 8th, the 15th, the 22nd, and the 29th date from the new moon is not always the Sabbath. We will establish that. Third, we will establish that the 7th day of the week in the Bible is continuous and uninterrupted. So the cycle is uninterrupted. After the 7th day is followed by the first day. After the 7th day, followed by the first day. In their calendar, if you look at their calendar, look at that. Look at on the screen. After the 8th, the next Sabbath is 15th. Then, Pizza 22. Then, Pizza 29. After 29, there is Pizza 30. Where does the 30th belong in the weekly cycle? Second, where does the new moon belong in a weekly cycle? We will prove from the Bible that the weekly cycle is uninterrupted with new moon day or the 30th day. Because sometimes in the lunar calendar, there is 29, but there is also 30. The problem is when the new moon fall, when the, hello. So, there is, every end of the month, there is an interruption of the continuing cycle of the weekly cycle because of the 30th and the new moon day. So, we will establish also that the 31 AD is truly the biblical year based on a reliable reference. That the 14th day of Nisan fall really on a Friday, not in accordance with some other encyclopedia like the Americana Encyclopedia, the Encyclopedia Britannica, and some other encyclopedias, which it says that Christ was resurrected on AD 33, not 31 AD. I think only the Seventh-day Adventists are making a diagram that 31 AD is the resurrection of Christ, putting the 27th AD as the baptism of Christ, 31 AD, which is we consider the middle of the week, 31 AD as the crucifixion of Christ, 34 AD is the end of the 70 weeks prophecy in Daniel 9. That only Seventh-day Adventist is presenting that diagram or that calendar or year of Christ's resurrection based on our diagram. But in other encyclopedias, they do not put the death of Christ on 31 AD, but 33 AD. The reason is that if you use the Gregorian calendar, the 14th day of Nisan falls on a Friday, 33 AD. But if you insist of 31 AD, the 14th day of Nisan cannot fall on a Friday based on the Gregorian calendar, which is the very calendar that we are using. Again, we are using the Gregorian calendar. They said the issue of 31 AD as the exact year where Christ was resurrected, Christ was nailed to the cross, which would fall on a Friday, that the only calendar that we could go to is the calendar of the Bible, not the Gregorian calendar, because 31 AD, by using Gregorian calendar, would fall on a different day rather than on a Friday. We will also answer the texts that are being used by the Lunar Sabbatarian as their proof that the Sabbath is based on a new moon. And we will also answer their reference, which is the Universal Jewish Encyclopedia. So again, let us look into the principles in dealing with the so-called new light. Ellen White said, God has not passed his people by and chosen one solitary man here and another there as the only ones worthy to be entrusted with his truth. He does not leave the church in darkness, of course, and letting the body unaware of this. So he does not entrust it to one man, because in every reform, there are those who make this claim. Another is that when the power of God, Selected Messages Book 1, 160, testifies as to what is truth, that truth is to stand forever as the truth. So there is no change of truth. We cannot say that the truth during the time is no longer the truth in our time. Ellen White said, when the power of God testifies as to what is truth, that truth is to stand forever as the truth. No after suppositions contrary to the light God has given are to be entertained. When Seventh-day Adventist was established, there was a thorough study made by our pioneers, and they keep the true Sabbath, which is exactly the Sabbath that we are keeping. But lately, in this decade or previous decade, this lunar Sabbatarian doctrine arose. Ellen White said, men will arise with interpretations of Scripture which are to them truth, but which are not truth. The truth for this time, God has given us a foundation for our faith. So, further, Ellen White said, Satan hopes to involve the remnant people of God in the general ruin that is coming upon the earth. As the coming of Christ draws nigh, he will be more determined and decisive in his efforts. That's why men in Cebuan, mga lalaki o babae magtindog o mag-angkon nga sila dunay bag-ong kahayag o mga bag-ong pagbutyag. Kansang tumong mao ang pagsamok diha sa mga dalan nga muhon, whose tendency is to unsettle from the old landmarks. So, let us go into the evidences from the scriptures which would counter-argue their point. I am a little bit uneasy now because it's past 12. I already received a text reminding me of our appointment. But maybe up to 12:15 or 12:20, I will we will continue next time. But I will, my PowerPoint. What is this? There are many Cebuan kasi. Kaya, iano ko sa English lahat. What is their basis again? The seventh-day Sabbath of creation in Genesis 1 and 2 proves that the Sabbath is not based on the new moon. Dito palang daan, sa Tagalog, dito pa lang sa mapruiba na natin na mali yung doktrina ng lunar Sabbath. Let us again read the text. And God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons. Now they are highlighting these seasons as Moedim. We will explain later what is really Moedim. Is Sabbath a Moedim, or are Moedim exclusively observed based on the moon? We will find out in the course of our presentation. It says here, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years, and let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth. And it was so. And God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. And God set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from darkness, etc., etc. Now, what is their point here? They said that because moon, it says here, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be. So what is this lights in the firmament of the heavens? These are two lights, the greater light and the lesser light. What is the lesser light? Of course, the moon. The greater light is the sun. If these lights are for signs and for seasons, Moedim, meaning including the moon, not only the sun, but also the moon, are for Moedim, and because according to Leviticus 23, Sabbath is Moedim, part of Moedim, therefore we should base it on the moon. Because Sabbath is Moedim. Let us now look into this analysis. On day 1, there was no moon yet, because moon was created according to verse 14 on the 4th day. So, day 2, there was no moon. Day 3, still no moon. Day 4, there the moon, including the sun and the stars, were created according to the text. On the again, if God intended that the weekly cycle should be based on the moon, the first thing that God must have done prior to the first day of the week is the creation of the moon. That is why I would always ask this lunar Sabbatarian. I have met them in somewhere in, I was telling the district pastor, Pastor, do not take lightly these lunar Sabbatarians. Siya, Pastor, kanang mga new moon nga mga doktrina, mga lunar Sabbatarian, mga way buot ng doktrina, why makuha sa ako mga kaigsuunan, di na sila katarog. They could not touch my brethren because ingon siya sa Bisaya, why buot ng doktrinaha? I said, Pastor, do not take it lightly because he did not seriously give heed to my reminder and my warning or my, what is this? Yeah, reminder. When the lunar Sabbatarian visited his district, right there and there, in that first 3 days, 3 families were converted to their church, and immediately they left our church, telling the brethren, we have now discovered the truth, and we know that we are following the pagan 7th day and not the biblical 7th day Sabbath. And so the brethren has no knowledge about calendrical studies, calendrical issues. They have no idea what is this Gregorian calendar, etc., etc. They could not argue. Then after that, after 2 weeks after, there were already 5 families. And so one of the elders called me up, said, Pastor, could you help our district here? I said, I already gave warning to your district pastor. Said, our district pastor could not refute. In fact, when our district pastor visited these brethren, he just went out of their house truly sad because he could not refute. In fact, he was defeated by these brethren. And so after few days, the district pastor called me. He said, Pastor, you were right. I just took lightly your instruction. Now 5 of the families in my district are now baptized into the new church, into the Lunar Sabbatarian church. And I said, that is it. So I responded to his invitation. I went there. I said, gather all your brethren in all your districts. So all the brethren, I said, invite those 5 families to attend the church. And so they visited those families. Only 3 families joined. The other 2 families did not. And I said, where are the other 2 families? They did not. There is no need. They said, there is no need for us to listen to Pastor Perral because our position is very strong. And so after our lecture, after my lecture, the 3 families who attended, despite so many questionings, everything were answered satisfactorily. And so the 3 families decided to again go back to our church. The other 2 families, I said, Pastor, let us visit those other 2 families who did not join, who did not attend our Sabbath or our service. So we visited. And when we visited, he said, brother, sister, I was there with the district pastor, with some of our elders. Brother, good afternoon. We are here because here with us is Pastor Perral. He will explain everything about the issue. And the one family said, there is no need. There is no need for us to listen. Just go away. We don't need you anymore. The pastor appealed, said, give us just a short time. Be open-minded. Let us explain. No need. And so we were not able to explain to that family. We visited again the next family, and still the other family was already close-minded until now. So that was the sad part there. Here again, let's go back. If the new moon is the basis of the weekly cycle, and since moon was said to be created on the 4th day, So the first day after the new moon is the day 5 in creation week. Did you see it in the screen? And then the day 6 in creation week is the second day after the new moon. And the seventh day in creation week, which God sanctified, blessed, and rested, is the third day after the moon creation. That is why I would always ask when I face this, the debate. There was actually a layman in, what is this, matagal na siyang layman talaga. Soul winner itong layman na to. Matagal na soul winner na layman ito sa Misamis Oriental. Tapos, nung na-encounter niya itong founder ng New Moon, nagkaroon sila ng debate. Natalo siya at nakumbinsi siya. Nung nakumbinsi na siya, siya na ngayon ang naghagit og mga debate over the radio. Maraming mga radio program siya na hagit niya debate. Ano tong hagit ng debate? Hinahamon niya ng debate. Nanghahamon siya ng debate. Nung nagkatagpo kami, sabi ko, ito unang tanong ko sa iyo. Hindi na tayo magdebate sa public. Ito lang ang unang tanong ko sa iyo. Sagutin mo. Pag tama yung sagot mo, sasali ako sa iyo. Sabi ko, pag sinabi ng Biblia, and the evening and the morning were the first day. Maliwanag ba yan? Verse 3, and the evening, and God said, let there be light, and there was light. And then it says in the text, and the evening and the morning were the first days. This is my simple question. Ito bang first day na ito? First day of the week ito or first day of the month? Diyan siya nahirapan. Nag-isip-isip. Sabi ko, dapat hindi ka magkamali sa sagot mo kasi kahit anong sagot mo diyan, talagang bulos ay kakagad. What is this first day? First day of the week or first day of the month? Talagang sa Bisaya pa, pitok-pitok yung mata. Iwan ko ano yun, ano yung pagkasabi sa Tagalog. Pitok-pitok siya sa mata. Hindi siya sumagot. Tinawagan niya yung founder niya. Sabi ko, tulungan mo. Kahit yung sa American yun na pinuno. Kasi yung pinuno nila sa Amerika. Sabi ko, kahit yung pinuno niyo sa Amerika, tawagan mo. Ipasagot yung simpleng tanong ko. Yung sinabi diyan sa bersikulo, and the evening and the morning were the first day. Anong first day yan? First day of the week or first day of the month? Kasi pag sabihin niyang first day of the week, talo siya kagad. Pag sabihin niyang first day of the month, lalo ng talo. Mga kapatid, it's already 12:20. I don't know because this is how I wish I could continue, but I have made an appointment. I was thinking that my presentation would only be up to 12 o'clock. Maybe I will proceed up to 12:30. So, here is their calendar. Their calendar is new moon is not part of the weekly cycle. Again, even if you look at their internet, in their calendar, what they call biblical calendar, they said, the first day, which is the new moon day, is not part of the weekly cycle. And also the 30th is not part of the weekly cycle in case new moon, the 1 month duration from one new moon to the next new moon, because there are different kinds of new moon. We will study about that later on. How was the new moon treated during the time of Jesus and this astronomical new moon, which is now in our calendar? We call that astronomical new moon. We will discuss on that later. So, these are the points. If God intended that the weekly cycle must begin or must be preceded with new moon, why is it that God did not make the moon ahead of the first day of the week? Why was the moon only created on the fourth day? That is very clear that moon should not be made a basis of weekly cycle. According to Genesis 1 and 2, the first day that is being mentioned in Genesis 1:3-5, is that the first day of the week or the first day of the month? Very clear that it was the first day of the week. Now let's go back to their calendar. The first day of the week, according to them, is always, the new moon is not part of the first day of the week. But new moon day is the first day of the month. So the first day of the week is the second day after the new moon's day. Again, the first day of the week is the second day after the new moon's day according to their calendar, which they claim to be the biblical calendar. But by looking closely at Genesis 1:3-5, you will notice that the first day that God had created, or that the first day that God had pronounced to be the first day, the evening and the morning were the first day, is not preceded by a new moon's day. But the moon was only created on the fourth day. So God did not intend moon to be the basis of weekly cycle. Because if that was the first day of the month, why did God rest on the seventh day? Again, according to them, it's the every 8th day of the month is the 7th day of the week. Pizza utso galing sa new moon. Kung ang first day ay pizza 2, dapat pizza 8 na ang Panginoon nag-rest. But He rested on the 7th day from the first day that is mentioned. That is why they could not answer whether it is the first day of the week or the first day of the month. Kaya kung sabihin first day of the week, talagang palpak. Pag sabihin lang first day of the month, lalo na. Kasi pag first day of the month, dapat pizza 8 na ang Panginoon, pang-8 araw na nagpahinga at binanal at binasbasan. Kaya, He should have first created the moon if He really intended the moon to be the basis of the weekly cycle. So, if the day during the new moon or new moon's day is the first day of the week, why is it that the Genesis account mentions the first day without talking about moon, without mentioning any new moon? If it is true that new moon day is the basis of weekly cycle. New moon man kaha ang basihan, if new moon is the basis as the starting point of the week, why is it that God never mentioned new moon in Genesis chapter 1 and chapter 2? If new moon is the basis, why is it that the moon was only mentioned on the fourth day and was not mentioned ahead of the first day of the week? So, again, based on this, actually we have many arguments. We will be presenting many arguments, and we will also refute their universal Jewish calendar, and we will also refute the Moedim. So if the first day of Genesis 1:3-5 is the first day of the week, isn't that a strong reason to believe that Sabbath or the weekly cycle is not based on the new moon? So this is the point. On the fourth day only was the Sabbath, was the moon mentioned. If God had created the new moon first, and then the first day began after the new moon's day, then they would be right, and they all would be right. But because there is no mention about that, then God never intended the new moon to be the starting point in determining the weekly cycle. Next, that Ten Commandments, especially the fourth, which speaks about the seventh-day Sabbath, points us back to the Genesis 1 and 2 account. Why is it that the Ten Commandments never mentioned anything about new moon as the basis of keeping the Sabbath? Genesis 1:1 says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Then in verse 3, and the evening, verse 5, and the evening and the morning were the first day. In Exodus 20:11, in 6 days, the Lord made heaven and earth. So there was no new moon mentioned as a very important creation God had made prior to the first day of the week. But the first day of the week was mentioned, and on the seventh day, from that first day, the seventh day, God rested, God sanctified, God blessed. There was no mention prior to that of a special creation of the new moon, so that the first day should always be based on the new moon. So Exodus 20:11 points us back to the creation account in Genesis 1 and 2. It says, for in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth. 6 days, because on the seventh day God rested. There is no prior day which is taking ahead of the first 6 days where God created the heavens and earth. Again, kay sa unom ka adlaw gibuhat sa Dios ang langit ug ang yuta. Unom ka adlaw. Where is the new moon? If new moon must be ahead of the first day of the week. Again, this very argument would already put down their argument. Now, what is the reason of the lunar Sabbatarian? They said, on the first day of creation, when light was made, when God said, and let there be light, and there was light. They said, when light was created during the creation, moon was already there, sun was already there, stars were already there, but they were only shown or revealed in the fourth day. But prior to the fourth day, mentioning moon, sun, moon, and stars, they already existed prior to the fourth day. That is their argument. Now let us go to the Strong's Exhaustive Concordance. The verb that is used is asa, meaning to labor, to work about anything, to make, to produce by labor, to create, as heaven, earth, according to Gesenius Hebrew Chaldean Lexicon to the Old Testament, page 657. If God had meant that the sun, moon, and stars merely appeared, because their argument is, dito na lang ipakita, doon na lang ipinakita ng Panginoon sa fourth day, pero bago ang first day, nandoon na sila. So, if God had meant that the sun, moon, and stars merely appeared on fourth day, then he would have inspired Moses to use the same Hebrew word, ra'ah, instead of asa, which he inspired him to use in reference to when the dry land appeared, which is exactly the same word, or the word that is used, appeared as the waters gathered, etc., etc. So, Genesis 1:9 tells us that the word appears in Hebrew is employing the word ra'ah in Hebrew. But the word that is used is asa. That means that their argument to prove that God merely make it appear on the fourth day, but he had already created the moon prior to the first day, is not so sound. Although some Adventists would also try to explain that way. But why is the mention of fourth day just to make it appear if it was already created prior to the creation week. It is very clear in Exodus 20, for in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth. So what is in the heaven? Everything He created. But it did not say there was a prior creation of moon before making it appear on the 4th day. So in other words, 4th day is not a creation, but just to make it appear, just an appearance of what had been created beforehand. We all understand that 6 days is a creation week. On the 7th, God rested, sanctified, and blessed. 6 days of creation, not a 6 days of some uncreation, but just an appearance of something which had been previously created. Again, if God meant it to just make it appear, the Hebrew word ra'ah could have been used rather than asa. Another point, God rained manna on the 15th day of the month, which is also a strong evidence by looking back at their calendar. According to their biblical calendar, they said every 8th, 15th, 22, and 29 is always a Sabbath after the new moon. Now let us remember that the days mentioned in the Bible usually is based on the new moon. Now here, Joshua 5:10 to 12, it says, and the children of Israel lived in Gilgal, and in the afternoon, on the 14th day of the month. Again, let us remember, month in Jewish calendar is based on the new moon, not the Gregorian calendar that we have now, which is not a lunar calendar. It says here, they celebrated Passover at the plain of Jericho. And on the morrow, after the Passover, again, what is that? 14th. And on the morrow, what is tomorrow? After the 14th is the 15th. Og sa pagkaugma, human sa Pasko, they ate their yield from the field. Mga tinapay or unleavened bread, sinanglag nga mga trigo, og sa sunod nga adlaw, sa nakasugod na sila pagkaon sa abot sa yuta, again they already started celebrating. Ang mana mihunong. The manna started to be poured down. When is the manna not poured? In 6 days, manna is to be poured. Only on the 7th, wala na gihulog nga mga mana. Wala nang inihulog. Inihulog ba yun? Inihulog na mga mana. Wala na. So, mamunit lang silang mana. They only have to pick up mana from 1st day to 6th day. Now, it says here, on the 14th day, ika-pulo og upat. Sorry na sa mga hindi makaintindi ng Bisaya. On the 14th day of the month, in English, 14th day of the month, they celebrated the feast of Passover in the field of Jericho, in the plain of Jericho. And in the morrow, meaning 15th, 15th, after the Passover, they ate their fruits from the field, from their fields. Nangaon sila. After that, on the 16th, miundang ang mana nga gipaulan. 16th in their calendar is the first day of the week. Let me show you again their calendar. Their calendar is, look at the 16th. 16th is the first day of the week. 15th, according to their calendar, they said the biblical calendar, 15th is the Sabbath. But according to the text that we have read, on the 16th, may undang ang mana. Huminto yung mana. Ibig sabihin, it was a Sabbath. If it was a Sabbath, then 15th is not the Sabbath. Therefore, 15th is not always a Sabbath. And their calendar is disproved by this. So, let us look at this. Ang pizza 14 is the Passover, ang Pasko. Pasko, hindi yung Pasko natin. Sa Bisaya na Biblia, yung Passover ay i-translate na Pasko. Hindi yung sa atin ngayon na ang Christmas ay Pasko. Hindi. Ang pizza 15, so pagkabukas, after the Passover feast, kumakain sila sa abot sa yuta. On the 16th, ang mana ay tumigil. Hindi na ipinauluan ng Panginoon ang mana. So kailan lang ang instruction sa Biblia ipatigil ang pagpaulan ng mana? Bisahin natin, Exodus 16:26. On 6 days, in 6 days, mga pamunit kamo og mana. You can pick up mana in 6 days. But on the 7th day, which is the Sabbath day, on this day, you cannot find them. So, God will not rain mana on the Sabbath, which is the 7th day. Now here, in their calendar, every 15th is a Sabbath. Because ang sa kanilang kalendaryo, 8, 15, 22, 29 ay palaging Sabbath yan. Yun ang Sabbath palagi. That is why kung may maano kayo, may ma-meet kayong mga lunar sa Batarian kahit saan sa Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao, ang basihan nila yung lunar sa yung moon, new moon, tingnan niyo mo yung new moon diyan nakalagay sa kalendaryo. Pag tingin mo sa new moon sa kalendaryo, may pizza yan. Diyan magbilang ng weekly cycle. Kaya sa kanila, ang every 15th from the new moon is always the Sabbath. Dito nabasa natin sa Josue na yung ika-16th na huminto yung mana. Sa 15th hindi. So ibig sabihin, hindi lahat ng 15th ay Sabbath. So mali yung kalendaryo na ini-insist nilang yun ang sinasabi nilang biblical calendar. So every weekly cycle that would reach to the 7th, which is the Sabbath, we have made it clear that it is not dependent on the monthly or yearly cycle. In other words, weekly cycle is totally independent from the monthly cycle, and monthly cycle is also totally independent of the yearly cycle. In the lunar year, you only have 355 days in a lunar year. In a solar year, you have 365 and 0.2422 days, or round of 365 and 1/4 days. That is in a solar year. But in a lunar year, you only have 354, 355 days in 1 year. So how is it going to be reconciled? Because I will be presenting to you that the biblical calendar or the yearly reckoning of the biblical calendar is lunisolar, lunar year and also solar year. How is it being coincided? Because lunar year ay talagang maunang magliyok ng cycle kung hihintayin pa yung solar year. Kasi yung solar year 365 1/4 days. Ay ang lunar year ay dosing 30 days, dosing 29, 30 days. Hindi exactly 30 days. Sa tinatawag nating prophetic year or prophetic month, in a prophetic month, a prophetic year is 360 days. Kaya nga yung computation natin sa time times and half a time is based on 360. That is 360 as a prophetic year. But in a lunar year, it's only 355 kasi yung araw is not consistent 30. Ganito yan Abib, Iyar, Sivan, etc. Tamos, Ab, Ilul, something like then, Tisni, or Itanim, those are the first 7 months. Yung Nisan, Iyar, Sivan, ang number of days done is 30, 29, 30, 29, 30, 29, interval. 30, 29, 30, 29, 30, 29. Sa Gregorian calendar is 31, 29, or 28, 31, 30, 31, 30, 31, 30, 31, 30. I mean, July is 31, August 31, September is 30, October is 31, November is 30, December is 31. Kaya 365 ang 1 year. Sa lunar year is only 354 days. Sa prophetic year is 360. Pero yung actual counting of number of days in a lunar year is 354 days. By looking at it closely, weekly cycle is independent of the monthly cycle, and also monthly cycle and weekly cycle is independent of the yearly cycle. Kasi hindi ang 365 dili maigo ang 51 weeks bungkig. Ang 365 hindi pud mo igo ang 306 ang 30-day monthly cycle. Kung 30 day kay 360. Ang solar year is 365 na ay mayroong 5 days na sobra sa 30-day cycle. Mas lalo na kung strict lunar cycle, 355 may 10 days na bitin as compared to 365 lunar year, solar year. Pag sinabing solar year, diyan nag-umpisa nag-revolve ang sun, liliyok yan sa ang earth mag-revolve around the sun from the starting point. When it reaches back to the starting point is totally 365 and 1/4 days. 365. Ang lunar year is only 355. Kulang ng 10 days. Paano ma-reconcile kung tinasabing lunisolar ang kalendar ng mga Hudyo? Lunisolar. Lunar at saka solar. Paano? I-explain natin yan para maintindihan natin. At yung weekly cycle, hindi tugma sa monthly cycle. Kasi, ang 4 weeks ay 28. Kung 29-30, 29-30, I mean, sa lunar month, 29-30, 29-30. Kung solar month is 30-31, 30-31. Paano ang isang linggo ay 7 days? Times 4, 28. Bitin og duha ka adlaw para mag-30. So, hindi dinesign ng Panginoon na ang weekly cycle ay mag-fit ng monthly cycle. Hindi rin i-design ng Panginoon na ang weekly cycle ay mag-fit ng yearly cycle dahil bungkig ang 53 weeks or 52 weeks sa isang taon. Hindi rin dinesign ang 12-month cycle sa yearly cycle dahil 12 lunar month is only 355 days. Hindi 365 and 1/4 days. Bungkig nga, mayroon nga 1/4. Kaya, totally independent ang weekly cycle sa lunar cycle at saka sa solar cycle. Solar year, hindi pinapifit ng Panginoon ang 12 months. Lunar month. Hindi rin pinapifit ng Panginoon ang weekdays or weekly cycle sa isang buwan. Dahil bungkig ang 4 na linggo, 4 weeks are 28 days. Whereas ang 1 month ay 29-30 or 30-31. Kung lunar month ay 29-30. 28 lang ang 4 weeks. So hindi mag-fit sa dapat ginawa ng Panginoon ang from one new moon to the next new moon is 28 days. Kaya pagkatapos ng ang new moon, pag umpisa na naman ng new moon, first day of the week na kaagad yan. So, sangko sa 28. Umabot ng 29, umabot ng 30 days ang one new moon to the next new moon. So, God had designed really that weekly cycle is independent of the month or the lunar month, because weekly cycle has only 4 cycles in a month, but lacking of 2 or 1 days, 1 day or 2 days, because 20 only the 4 weeks, 7 times 4 has only 28 days. Ang isang buwan ay 29-30. Kung lunar month yan. Kung solar month yan ay 30-31. Kaya bungkig talaga. So, of course, the biblical month is not the Gregorian month that we now have. It is always from one new moon to the next new moon. It is lunar month. And again, I'm very sorry because text is already telling me why I have not arrived yet. So we will continue next meeting and we will explain, and I will see to it that it's no longer in a Cebuan kasi dito makita nyo sa screen Bisaya eh. So I will translate into English or make a PowerPoint in English and again explain all these things so that we will not be confused as far as biblical calendar is concerned in comparison with the current calendar that we now have, which is Gregorian calendar, which they accuse to be the pagan calendar. Of course, it is made of pagan because it started with Julian calendar and it's now a Gregorian calendar. Pagan, it's not coinciding with the lunar month of the Bible. The month that we now have in Gregorian calendar is solar month, not lunar month. The Bible has lunar month. It has also solar month. Gregorian calendar is solar year. The Bible has solar month. Lunar month. Lunar year. In the Gregorian calendar is solar year. I will explain to you on that later on so that we will not get confused, and then we will bullseye how to refute the lunar Sabbatarian based on the moon, new moon, and also we will refute the text, biblical text that they have used. They have also a strong text which is in Ezekiel 45. We will go to that, and it's 10 o'clock before 1. So I am very sorry na talagang hindi matapos ito. Sisikapin natin next presentation, matatapos natin ito at makaumpisa tayo sa eksaktong panahon para 12 o kahit lalampas ng 12, matapos natin para maliwanagan tayo lahat tungkol sa issue na ito dahil hanggang ngayon mayroon pa din sila. Kung kayo'y maimbitahan nila at mapaliwanag nila yung kanilang posisyon at tayo ay wala gaanong background about calendar, biblical calendar, Jewish calendar, Gregorian calendar, Julian calendar, whatever calendar, if we have no enough background, we will be really be in a hard time refuting these people, because all we have to admit is, of course, we are using the Gregorian calendar, and we said that is pagan calendar. We are not to base our keeping of the Sabbath on the pagan calendar. Let us keep our Sabbath based on the biblical calendar. So we will continue next meeting on this issue, and I will see to it that we can be able to finish this next meeting. Thank you very much. I'm very sorry that I have to stop because yung mga text ay talagang sunod-sunod na nagtataka bakit hindi pa ako nakarating. Talagang malayo na yung dinampasan ko sa oras ng appointment namin. Pero sabi nila naghihintay pa rin sila. So thank you very much. I now turn over the time to Dr. Ray. And sorry, Dr. Ray, but I will make sure that next meeting we can be able to finish the discussion on the issue of the lunar Sabbath or new moon Sabbath issue. Thank you very much. And God bless us all.
Okay,
Everyone.
okay, Pastor. Maraming salamat. Hanggang sa susunod na linggo naman. Thank you very much. Okay, mga kapatid, let's have a break for 2 to 3 minutes before we give the time to Ma'am Ramak.
Actually, next meeting, you can ask all your questions and we will try to answer. You can ask all your questions.
Mag-start po tayo ng mag-start po tayo ng 10 o'clock, Doc.
Okay.
We will borrow the time sa isang subject para tuloy-tuloy. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
Ito.
Okay mga kapatid, break po muna tayo.